The massive Imperial ship emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, its sleek silver hull reflecting the distant sunlight. Inside the United Earth Defense Command Center, alarms blared as operators tracked the unknown vessel's approach. Admiral James Marcus stood before the main display, his weathered face illuminated by the red warning lights. He had spent 30 years preparing humanity for this moment. First contact with an advanced alien civilization. But something about this approach felt wrong. The vessel made no attempt to hide its presence or power. "Contact from the alien ship, sir," reported Lieutenant Reed, her fingers moving swiftly across the holographic controls. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies." Marcus nodded. "Put it through." The screen flickered to life, revealing a tall, humanoid figure with pale blue skin and elaborate ceremonial armor. "I am Ambassador Gray of the Galactic Empire. We have come to welcome your species into our civilization." Marcus noted the subtle condescension in the alien's tone. The same tone he had heard countless times in Earth's history, just before one nation attempted to colonize another. "Welcome, Ambassador," Marcus replied carefully. "I am Admiral Marcus of the United Earth Defense Fleet. We are honored by your visit, but I must ask about your military escort." The alien's expression shifted slightly. "A simple precaution. Your species is young, and the galaxy can be dangerous. We merely wish to ensure a smooth transition as you join our protectorate." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Ambassador, before we continue, I believe you should know something about humanity's history." "Admiral, we have studied your civilization," Gray interrupted. "A primitive species that has barely reached its moon. We understand your capabilities perfectly." Marcus allowed himself a small smile. "With respect, Ambassador, I don't think you do. Humanity has spent most of its recorded history at war. We fought on every terrain imaginable. Mountains, deserts, oceans, and urban centers. We've mastered guerrilla warfare, psychological warfare, and asymmetric combat. We've developed weapons that can level cities and others that can target a single person across continents." The ambassador's expression remained unchanged, but Marcus noticed a slight twitch in their left eye. "Are you threatening the Galactic Empire, Admiral?" "Not at all," Marcus replied calmly. "I'm warning you. Humanity doesn't want war. We've seen enough of it. But if you force us to fight, you'll be facing a species that has turned warfare into an art form. A species that has never stopped innovating ways to defend itself." Lieutenant Reed passed Marcus a tablet showing multiple Imperial ships entering the solar system. The ambassador noticed the movement and smiled. "Your warning is noted, Admiral, but unnecessary. The Empire has brought peace to 10,000 worlds. Your experience with tribal conflicts is hardly relevant to galactic warfare." Marcus thought of the bunkers deep beneath every major city, the orbital defense platforms disguised as communication satellites, and the centuries of military doctrine updated for space warfare. "Then let me be clearer, Ambassador. Run. If you try to force humanity into submission, you'll learn why our history books are filled with wars, and why we've worked so hard to avoid them." The ambassador's smile faded slightly. "The Empire does not run, Admiral. We will return in 3 Earth days for your answer. Choose wisely between peaceful submission and alternatives." As the transmission ended, Marcus turned to his staff. "Send word to all Earth Defense Commands. Operation Broken Sword is now active. And get me the Security Council. They need to know what's coming." Lieutenant Reed looked up from her station. "Sir, do you think they'll listen?" "About our history." Marcus watched the Imperial ships retreat to a holding position near Mars. "No, Lieutenant, they won't. The Empire has never faced a species that developed through constant conflict. They don't understand what that means." He turned to face the command center crew. "But they will learn." As the Earth Defense Force moved to high alert, Marcus remembered an old quote from his military history classes: "Never corner someone who is used to fighting their way out." The Empire was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The next 3 days would determine humanity's future, but unlike the ambassador's assumption, it wouldn't be a choice between submission or destruction. It would be a choice between accepting humanity as equals or facing the full fury of a species that had mastered the art of war through millennia of practice. And Marcus knew which choice the Empire would make. They always did. 3 days passed too quickly. The Imperial fleet returned with enough ships to darken the skies over major cities. Their message was simple: Earth would join the Empire, or it would burn. Admiral Marcus stood in the reinforced command bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, watching as the first wave of Imperial dropships entered Earth's atmosphere. The Empire had rejected every attempt at diplomacy, just as he had expected. "All defense grid stations report ready," Lieutenant Reed announced, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "Orbital platforms are armed and tracking." Marcus nodded, his mind drifting to the history lessons he had taught at the academy. How many empires had fallen because they underestimated their opponents? How many conquerors had learned too late that technology alone didn't win wars? "Send the signal," he ordered. "Operation Thunderstrike is now active." Across the globe, humanity's carefully hidden defenses sprang to life. The Empire's scans had missed the thousands of automated defense turrets hidden in civilian buildings. They hadn't detected the EMP weapons disguised as power stations, and they certainly hadn't expected the swarms of microdrones that now rose from every city, farm, and forest. The first Imperial dropship exploded mid-air over New York, caught in a web of laser fire from 100 hidden positions. In London, EMP bursts knocked dozens more from the sky. The Imperial troops that did manage to land found empty streets. The civilians had long since moved to underground shelters, leaving behind a maze of traps and automated defenses. "Imperial command ship is broadcasting," Reed reported. "They're demanding our surrender." Marcus allowed himself a grim smile. "Send them the prepared response." On the Imperial command ship, Ambassador Gray watched in growing horror as the human defense systems tore through the first wave of troops. The message that appeared on his screen only deepened his concern. "We warned you to run. This is your last chance." "Impossible," High Commander Stone growled from beside him. "These primitives couldn't have developed such defenses. They barely have space flight." A junior officer rushed to them with new reports. The humans were using simple projectile weapons, but with deadly efficiency. Their soldiers moved in small coordinated groups, striking from hidden positions and disappearing before Imperial forces could respond. Worse, they seemed to know exactly where to hit the Imperial armor's weak points. "Sir," the officer reported, "we're detecting massive energy signatures from their moon." Before Stone could respond, brilliant beams of light shot from hidden bases on the lunar surface, slicing through several Imperial cruisers. The humans had turned their moon into a weapon platform, concealing it beneath the appearance of a barren satellite. In the underground bunker, Marcus watched the battle unfold. "Phase 2, he ordered. "Release the hunters." Across Earth's oceans, submarines that had been waiting silently launched their payloads. Thousands of autonomous underwater drones fled toward the Imperial ships hovering over the waters. The Empire's shields, designed to stop energy weapons and missiles, proved useless against simple mechanical harpoons that dragged ships down into the depths. "Sir," Reed called out, "Imperial forces are pulling back to high orbit. They're requesting immediate communication." Marcus straightened his uniform. "Put them through." Ambassador Gray's face appeared on the screen, his earlier confidence replaced by barely concealed shock. "Admiral Marcus, there seems to have been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding, Ambassador. We told you about our history with war. We warned you what would happen. The only misunderstanding was yours, thinking that reaching the stars meant we had forgotten how to fight." As the Imperial forces retreated to regroup, Marcus turned to his staff. "They'll be back," he said quietly. "And next time, they'll be ready for these tactics. But that's the thing about humans. We never use the same strategy twice. Lieutenant Reed, begin Phase 3 preparations. The Empire had made their first major mistake in centuries. They had assumed that a species' age determined its combat effectiveness. They were about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous opponent is the one that has never known true peace. Commander Tom Wilson crouched in the darkness of an asteroid belt, his small fleet of converted mining ships waiting silently. The Empire had adapted to Earth's defensive strategies, but they still hadn't learned humanity's most important lesson: never fight the same way twice. "Target approaching," whispered his tactical officer through the comm system. They had stripped their ships of all non-essential power to avoid detection. Even life support ran at minimum levels. A massive Imperial supply convoy emerged from hyperspace, its escort ships scanning for threats. They were looking for Earth's new warships, for the advanced weapons humanity had captured. They weren't looking for mining ships with crude but effective magnetic grapples. "Now," Wilson commanded. His fleet burst into action, their engines igniting as they launched from their hiding spots behind the asteroids. The Imperial ships, expecting an attack from organized military vessels, were caught completely off guard by the swarm of small, agile ships that moved like angry wasps. The mining ships' magnetic grapples, originally designed to pull asteroids, latched onto the Imperial vessels' hulls. Before the escorts could react, Wilson's ships were using the Empire's own shields against them. The grapples had passed through the energy barriers like they didn't exist. "Begin Phase 2, Wilson ordered with a grim smile. Small teams of human soldiers, wearing simple spacesuits, crawled along the magnetic lines onto the Imperial ships. They carried basic cutting tools, plasma torches modified from mining equipment. The Empire's mighty warships had never been designed to repel boarders who simply cut their way through the hull. Back on Earth, Admiral Marcus watched the operation through encrypted communications. "Remarkable," he said to Lieutenant Reed. "The Empire expects grand battles and epic space combat. They don't understand small unit tactics." Reed nodded, updating the battle display as reports came in. "Commander Wilson's teams have taken 3 supply ships and 2 escorts. Minimal casualties on our side." The Empire's response was predictable. They sent a battle fleet to crush these impudent raiders. But by the time they arrived, Wilson's forces had vanished, taking their prizes with them. The captured ships would be stripped, studied, and their technology adapted for human use. In the following weeks, similar raids happened across the sector. Small human ships appeared from nowhere, struck hard at weak points, and disappeared before the Empire could respond. They hid in dust clouds, inside gas giants' atmospheres, and even powered down to drift with space debris. "This is impossible," High Commander Stone raged in his flagship. "They're fighting like guerrillas," Ambassador Gray finished quietly. "Like raiders and resistance fighters. They're fighting the way they fought their entire history." A junior officer entered with new reports. Earth's forces were now using hybrid weapons: Imperial energy cannons mounted on human ships, human missiles loaded with Imperial warheads. Every captured piece of technology was quickly adapted and improved. The Empire had lost more ships in 3 months fighting humans than they had in the last century of expanding their territory. Worse, other species were watching. The myth of Imperial invincibility was cracking. In his command ship, hidden in the atmosphere of Jupiter, Commander Wilson received new orders from Earth Command. It was time for Phase 4, the first major offensive against Imperial territory. "They think they know what we can do now," Wilson told his crew as they prepared for their next mission. "They've studied our raids, analyzed our tactics. They think they're ready." He smiled. "But they still haven't learned. We never fight the same way twice." The crew nodded. They had all studied history, learned about centuries of human warfare. Every victory, every defeat had taught humanity something new. And now, those lessons would be applied to space warfare in ways the Empire could never expect. As Wilson's fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, he remembered something his old history teacher had said. The most dangerous enemy isn't the one with the biggest weapons. It's the one who has learned to win without them. The Empire was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The captured Imperial dreadnought floated in Earth's orbit, its once pristine hull now covered in human modifications. Inside, Admiral Marcus watched as engineers combined Earth's computer systems with Imperial technology. What had taken the Empire centuries to develop, humans were rebuilding and improving in months. "Sir," Lieutenant Reed called out, "the test results from the hybrid drive system are ready." Marcus walked to her station, examining the data. The Empire had built their ships for power and grandeur. Humans had stripped away the unnecessary parts, making them faster and more efficient. Where Imperial ships needed 10 crew members, humans needed 3. They thought technology was their advantage. Marcus said quietly, "They didn't understand that humans have been improving weapons since we first picked up sticks and stones." The main screen lit up with an incoming transmission. Commander Wilson's face appeared, his expression excited despite his obvious exhaustion. "Admiral, Operation Thunderstrike is ready. The fleet is in position." Marcus nodded. This would be humanity's first major offensive against Imperial territory. The Empire had pulled back to defend their core systems, thinking distance would protect them. They hadn't realized that humans had already cracked their hyperspace navigation codes. "Begin the operation," Marcus ordered. "And remember, no mercy, but no cruelty. We're not monsters, just survivors." Across 3 sectors of space, human fleets emerged from hyperspace simultaneously, but they didn't appear near military bases or fleet positions. Instead, they targeted the Empire's supply lines, repair stations, and communication hubs. In the Imperial capital, High Commander Stone received the reports with growing horror. The humans weren't trying to win giant battles. They were cutting the Empire into isolated pieces that couldn't support each other. "Impossible," he shouted, throwing a data pad across the room. "They can't have decoded our secure network so quickly." Ambassador Gray stood quietly in the corner, watching the tactical display. The human ships moved in patterns he had never seen before, using Imperial technology in ways its creators had never imagined. "Sir," a young officer reported, "we're getting strange readings from the human ships. Their weapons, they're not just copied Imperial technology. They've modified them, improved them." On his command ship, Wilson led the attack on a major Imperial supply base. His fleet's hybrid weapons combined the raw power of Imperial energy cannons with the precision of human targeting systems. The Empire's shields, designed to stop pure energy attacks, struggled against weapons that switched between energy and physical projectiles. "They're launching fighters," his tactical officer reported. Wilson smiled. "Deploy the drones." Thousands of small, unmanned craft swarmed out from the human ships. They were simple machines by Imperial standards, but they were piloted by artificial intelligence that could react faster than any living being. The Empire's fighters, designed for grand one-on-one battles, were overwhelmed by enemies that didn't care about honor or fair fights. Back on Earth, Marcus received the first reports of victory. "Casualties?" he asked. "Minimal on our side," Reed replied. "The Empire still hasn't adapted to our tactics. They keep trying to fight according to their traditional battle doctrines." Marcus watched as more reports came in. Human forces had captured crucial Imperial installations across 3 sectors. The Empire's rigid command structure was falling apart as they lost contact with their forces. "Send the message," he ordered. Across Imperial space, their communication networks carried a simple broadcast. "We warned you to run. Now you must choose. Adapt or fall." In his private chambers, Ambassador Gray watched the reports with a mixture of fear and fascination. The Empire had ruled space for 10,000 years, and in just 6 months, humans had changed everything they thought they knew about warfare. Perhaps, he whispered to himself, it's time for the Empire to learn some new tricks. The next phase of the war was about to begin. But now, for the first time, The Empire wasn't sure they could win. The Imperial Palace shook as protesters filled the streets outside. After 1,000 years of absolute rule, the Empire faced something new, its own citizens demanding change. News of human victories had spread across the galaxy, inspiring countless worlds to question Imperial authority. High Commander Stone stood before the Imperial Council, his once pristine uniform now wrinkled from sleepless nights. "The humans have taken control of 3 more sectors," he reported, his voice hollow. "Their tactics, they never repeat them. Every battle is different." In a quiet corner, Ambassador Gray watched the council members argue among themselves. Some wanted to surrender, others demanded they use planet-destroying weapons. None of them understood what they were really facing. Meanwhile, on the front lines, Commander Wilson's fleet approached an Imperial fortress world. But instead of attacking, his ships released thousands of small packages into the planet's orbit. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving transmissions from the surface. The pamphlets are working." The packages contained simple paper documents, dropped through the Imperial shields that were designed to stop energy weapons and missiles. On each paper was a message. "The Empire lied to you. You don't have to fight for them. We offer freedom." On Earth, Admiral Marcus reviewed the latest intelligence reports. "How many Imperial worlds have requested our protection?" he asked Lieutenant Reed. 17 in the last week alone," she replied. "And 30 more have begun open rebellions against Imperial control. Our psychological warfare is working better than expected." Marcus nodded. The Empire had ruled through fear and overwhelming force. They had no defense against an enemy that offered hope instead. Back in Imperial space, a group of Imperial warships broke formation and turned their weapons on their own fleet. Their commander broadcast a simple message: "We choose freedom." The Empire's rigid structure was crumbling. Their soldiers, trained to follow orders without question, didn't know how to handle choices. Their officers, used to fighting set-piece battles, couldn't adapt to human tactics that changed with every engagement. "Admiral," Reed called out, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Imperial capital. Ambassador Gray is requesting a private channel." Marcus accepted the call. Gray's face appeared on the screen, looking tired but determined. "Admiral, I need to know something. If the Empire surrenders, what are your terms?" "The same as they've always been," Marcus replied. "Freedom for all worlds to choose their own path. No more forced compliance, no more suppression of technology or ideas, and a new council with representatives from all species, including humans." Gray was quiet for a moment. "The Empire has ruled for 10,000 years. Change will not be easy." "Change never is," Marcus answered. "But you've seen what happens when you refuse to adapt. We gave you a chance to run. Now we're giving you a chance to grow." In his command ship, Wilson received new orders from Earth. His fleet would lead a push toward the Imperial capital, but not to destroy it. They would demonstrate human power one last time, to show the Empire that resistance was futile. "Prepare for jump," he ordered his crew. "Let's show them what humanity can really do." The Empire had built its fleets for grand battles, its fortresses for long sieges. They weren't prepared for human ships that could appear anywhere, strike without warning, and disappear again. They couldn't counter an enemy that treated space warfare like guerrilla combat. As reports of more Imperial worlds seeking human protection flooded in, Marcus stood in his command center, thinking about history. "Every empire falls," he said quietly, "but not every empire gets a chance to become something better." The next few days would determine whether the Empire would take that chance, or if they would learn one final lesson about human warfare, that sometimes the greatest victory comes not from destroying your enemy, but from turning them into allies. The galaxy was changing, and humanity, the species that had mastered the art of war through countless conflicts, was now teaching the Empire about something even more powerful: the art of change. The Imperial capital world's defenses were the strongest in the galaxy. 3 rings of battle stations surrounded the planet, supported by thousands of warships. It was a fortress that had never fallen in 10,000 years, until now. Commander Wilson's fleet appeared without warning, not at the edges of the system, but directly between the defense rings. Imperial commanders watched in horror as the human ships, using stolen and improved Imperial technology, slipped through their supposedly impenetrable defenses. How? High Commander Stone demanded, watching from his command center. How did they get so close? Ambassador Gray stepped forward. They studied our patrol patterns, found our blind spots. They think like predators. In Earth's command center, Admiral Marcus watched the operation unfold. Lieutenant Reed coordinated the complex dance of ships as human forces demonstrated their complete mastery of space warfare. "Sir," Reed reported, "Imperial forces are not responding to our presence. They appear to be confused." Marcus nodded. "They should be. We're not attacking. We're showing them something worse, that we could attack if we wanted to. And they couldn't stop us." Wilson's fleet moved in precise formations through the Imperial defenses, never firing a shot, but demonstrating how easily they could target critical systems. His ships carried a new weapon, one that the Empire feared more than any destruction. "Broadcasting now," Wilson reported to Earth Command. The transmission went to every screen, every communication device in the Imperial capital. It showed videos of Imperial worlds that had joined the humans, of Imperial citizens living freely, of former Imperial soldiers training alongside humans. But most importantly, it showed the truth about Earth's history. Centuries of warfare appeared on Imperial screens. World wars, civil wars, revolutions, but also the peace that followed. The lessons learned, the progress made. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their ability to fight, but their ability to learn from fighting and grow stronger. In the Imperial Palace, the Council watched in silence. They saw how humans had turned their war-torn history into wisdom, how they had taken the Empire's technology and improved it not through centuries of slow advancement, but through the rapid innovation that only comes from survival. "Admiral Marcus is requesting direct communication with the Council," a young officer reported. On the main screen, Marcus appeared before the Imperial Council. His expression was calm, but his words carried the weight of Earth's entire military history. "You had your chance to run," he said simply. "Now you have a choice. The old empire dies today, one way or another. But you can choose how: in fire and destruction, or in transformation and growth." Ambassador Gray stepped forward. "Admiral, the Council has seen your power, but what guarantees can you offer if we transform?" "The same guarantee that kept humanity from destroying itself," Marcus replied. "The understanding that strength comes not from controlling others, but from working together. We're offering you a chance to be part of something greater than an empire, a true galactic community." Wilson's fleet continued their dance through Imperial defenses, each movement showing another weakness, another flaw in the Empire's supposedly perfect system. "Look at your history," Marcus continued. 10,000 years of stagnation because you forgot how to adapt. Humanity remembers. We can teach you, help you grow, or we can end this the hard way." In the silence that followed, the Council members looked at each other. Their perfect empire, which had never lost a war, had been outmaneuvered by a species they had dismissed as primitive, not through superior technology or numbers, but through innovation, adaptation, and the hard-earned wisdom of countless conflicts. High Commander Stone stepped forward, his voice heavy with realization. "We should have run when you warned us. We should have listened." "Yes," Marcus agreed. "But now you have a chance to learn something even more important than running from superior force. You can learn how to become something better." The Empire's choice would reshape the galaxy. And humanity, the species that had mastered war through bitter experience, would lead the way to a different kind of peace. 1 year after the Imperial capital's surrender, the Great Hall of the newly formed Galactic Council buzzed with activity. Representatives from 100 worlds, including former Imperial planets and Earth's allies, gathered for the first anniversary of the new government. Admiral Marcus stood at the entrance, watching the diverse crowd. Beside him, Commander Wilson adjusted his formal uniform, still uncomfortable with diplomatic meetings. "Hard to believe it's only been a year," Wilson said quietly. "Sometimes I expect to wake up and find we're still fighting." Marcus nodded. The hardest part wasn't winning the war. It's building the peace that follows. Ambassador Gray approached them, wearing the simple clothes of a council representative rather than his old imperial regalia. "Admiral, Commander," he greeted them with a genuine smile. "The new training program is showing excellent results." The program he mentioned was perhaps humanity's greatest contribution to the new order. Former imperial officers and soldiers trained alongside humans, learning not just tactics and strategy, but the importance of adaptation and independent thinking. "How many worlds are participating now?" Marcus asked. 37, Gray replied, "and more requesting to join every month. Your approach to military training, combining education with ethics and history, it's revolutionary to them." Inside the hall, Lieutenant Reed, now Captain Reed, was giving a presentation to a group of young officers from various worlds. The screen behind her showed scenes from Earth's history. "The key to humanity's survival wasn't just our ability to fight," she explained. "It was our ability to learn from every conflict, to grow stronger not just in weapons, but in wisdom." In orbit above the capital, human and former Imperial ships patrolled together. The Imperial vessels had been redesigned, stripped of their excessive grandeur, and made more efficient. Like the Empire itself, they had been transformed into something more practical, more adaptable. High Commander Stone, now serving as a military advisor to the Council, watched the patrol from his office window. A year ago, he would have seen the mixed fleet as a sign of Imperial weakness. Now he understood it was a sign of true strength. "The patrol patterns make no sense," a young Imperial officer complained, studying the fleet movements. "Exactly," Stone replied with a small smile. "The humans taught us that predictability is a weakness. Every patrol follows a different pattern, just like they fought a different way in every battle." In another part of the council building, a museum displayed artifacts from the brief but decisive war. The first captured Imperial ship stood next to the simple mining vessels that humans had used to fight back. But the most popular exhibit was a simple piece of paper, the original warning that Admiral Marcus had given to the Empire. A group of school children from various worlds gathered around the display. Their teacher, a former Imperial citizen, read the warning aloud. "Run. If you try to force humanity into submission, you'll learn why our history books are filled with wars, and why we've worked so hard to avoid them." Marcus made his way to the main council chamber for the anniversary ceremony. The room had been redesigned, removing the old Imperial throne and replacing it with a circular arrangement of seats. No species or world stood above others now. "They're ready for you, Admiral," Reed said, joining him at the entrance. Inside, representatives from across the galaxy stood as Marcus approached the speaker's podium. The empire that had ruled for 10,000 years had been transformed in less than 2 years, not through destruction, but through the wisdom that only comes from understanding both war and peace. "1 year ago," Marcus began, "we proved that the greatest victory doesn't come from defeating an enemy, but from turning them into allies. The Empire chose not to run when we warned them. Instead, they learned something more valuable: how to change." As he spoke, ships from 100 worlds orbited overhead, their crews working together, learning from each other. The Empire had wanted to rule the galaxy. Humanity had shown them a better way. How to guide it, grow it, and most importantly, how to learn from it. The warning that had started it all had become more than just a threat. It had become a lesson that would shake the galaxy for millennia to come.